right, back at it. Athlete builder Jim and Lucas, we have Tim Brown in today. Been really excited about this. I have a long little intro, but follow along here. If you remember way back when we had Kenny Bigby on Navy SEAL, he then gets me in front of Bill Brown and Jeff Gum. And I was talking to Bill the other day. I said, hey, man, I remember when I was sitting there at the end of the SEAL swim and I'm listening to those speakers. You have Cindy Dietz, and it almost made my head snap when I heard her name. And then you introduced Tim Brown, and I'm like, who's that guy? And it's the fire guy, the fire chief on site during 9/11. And so we're going to get into that in a second, but just a little bit about him, and then I want to back up a little bit. But FDNY OEM, I looked it up, Office of Emergency Management. That's under Giuliani. Tim was a firefighter from 84 to '04 in Manhattan, in the city of New York. DOD civilian. Now that he's retired, he's anything but retired. He's working with the Tunnel of the Towers Foundation, the Missions of Honor, the 9/11 National Memorial Trail, Operation 300. He was there at the New York City SEAL Swim. So constantly in a life of service, making an impact, saving lives, and helping people deal with problems, dealing when they're in the middle of the fire, after the fire's over with, handling adversity, coming back from it, the mental adversity, just been in a life of service. And so, Tim, it's so humbling and our honor to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for being on, and thank you so much for your service.
Thank you, Jim.
It was great hearing your story way back then. And by way back, I mean just a couple months. But before we even get into that, what little I read about you, it said that you had a calling to be a firefighter from the get-go. Early on. You weren't 20, 25 years old thinking about it. You were a teenager, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So what drove you to take on that line of duty?
I was a bad kid in high school. I was getting in trouble. I was failing. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't have a lot of friends, and very sadly, I was smoking a lot of weed, and it showed in my schoolwork and all that. And one day there was a fire in Newington, Connecticut, where I grew up. Across the street, a house caught on fire, and my dad and my brothers, we all ran down there to see our neighbor's house. And a young guy I went to high school with named Jay Walsh was 1 year older. So I was 15, he was 16. And he lived on the other side of town, and I said, Jay, what are you doing here? You live way on the other side of town. And he said, I'll show you. And he took me to his car, and he had this fire engine red Toyota Corolla with a scanner in it. And basically he was like, I'm a junior fireman. And I said, you're a what? I'm a junior fireman. I said, what's a junior fireman? And he said, come down to the firehouse on Wednesday nights at 7. And you'll find out all about being a junior fireman. So I went down there, and they were teaching young teenagers my age the basics of stretching a hose, how to use a ladder, like things like that. And so I had a good time with them. And then the next week, Jay called me up before the following Wednesday, and he said, Tim, you can either be a junior fireman or you can be stoned. But you can't do both. You have to make a choice. And so really, I give Jay credit for straightening me out and getting me to be a junior fireman and getting me back on the right track. And I graduated high school and became a junior fireman. I stopped doing all the bad stuff, and it really helped me to straighten my life out as a teenager. It gave me mission, focus, purpose. It's something I enjoyed, something I look forward to. And I got to go to fires in a small town. I didn't get to go in the house or go into the apartment building or whatever, but I would stay outside and I would assist the other firemen, the real firemen, the older guys, and I would help them. And it really gave me something to do that I was very excited about doing. So that's kind of how it all started.
And then from there, you went to school. Did you go right to Manhattan, right to the city and start working there?
No, I went to the University of New Haven in New Haven, Connecticut, to pursue a bachelor's degree in fire science, we called it. I actually lived in a firehouse in West Haven, Connecticut, for free. In exchange for that, I got to jump on the truck and help them when they had a call or whatever. And I was the first one in this particular fire department. I was the first one to do that. And, that's really, I mean, that's all I wanted to do was be a fireman. At that point, I wanted to help people. I was thrilled by the excitement of it and the accomplishment when you are able to go put a fire out and save people's lives. I remember being down there. We pulled a couple of kids out of a house fire and we saved their life. And there was nothing more rewarding for me than to be able to help like that, help other humans who were in desperate need. So I went to New Haven. I was there 3.5 years in West Haven, and then I got a paid fire department job in New Britain, Connecticut, and I did that for almost 2 years. And then I went to New York in '84.
How was that? How different was that for you?
Completely different. Completely different.
No small houses.
No, not where I worked in Hunts Point in the South Bronx. We were busy. We were real busy then, back in the '80s. We went to a lot of. They called it the war years, and it was the tail end of the war years, which went from the late '70s into the '80s, where there was just a tremendous amount of fires, especially in Hunts Point in the South Bronx where we were, and I couldn't get enough of it. It's all I wanted to do with my life. I didn't care about anything else. I didn't care about girls. I didn't care about anything. I just wanted to be fireman. And I would have done it 24/7, 365 if they let me.
Well, man, true gift that your friend, one, changes your life and puts you on a straight and narrow.
Yeah.
And then honestly, speaking personally or my own kids or the kids that we work with or other folks, it's very challenging for someone to have that calling that's so strong in anything or have that focus that, hey, this is definitely what I want to do. Like my background's finance and investments. I run a gym and I work with athletes now, right? Those aren't that related. And it's completely different. But to have that calling that I want to be in this line of work at a young age and then do it and clearly do it at a high level, that's, man, it's probably very, very freeing as well.
Yeah, we were good. We had some, I worked with some great guys who I got to know. We did some great things together, and we helped people who were really down and out. We helped people who really needed help. It's very satisfying to be able to do that kind of work. And we didn't always win. Sometimes we lost. But a lot of times we did win. And we were able to help people. There's no amount of money you can pay me in the world, that tops that ability to be able to save people and to see the results. Pull kids out of burning buildings and give them a chance at life, and then watch them, grow up in the neighborhood after you save them. That is extremely rewarding.
I can't even imagine. It's hard to relate, but that's why it's so humbling to have someone in that line of work on the show. Would always talk to, and we have other people in my gym that are firefighters, police officers, paramedics, military, sailors, Marines, etc. And I'm always thanking them for their service. And someone will say, hey, Jim, not everybody in the military is a great person. There's shitbags everywhere. I go, well, that's true. And I get that. And there are. In every industry, there are, for sure. And I said, but my response is always the same in that those folks, though they might be lesser than other folks in their line of work, they still at some point signed a piece of paper that said, I'm going to die for you.
Yeah.
I'm going to put myself on the line for you. And that's the part that always gets me, that even if maybe you kind of suck at some things, you're still agreeing to do that in front of God and everybody. So when I see those kind of folks, I'm always just humbled. I'm like, man, hey man, thanks for the help. Thanks for doing the things that I didn't do because I don't deserve it. But so it's amazing, awesome work.
Yeah.
People will say that, or at least my parents, because they're in their 70s, they'll say like they knew where they were when Kennedy was shot, right? And I was born in 74, so I have no idea, right? But I know exactly where I was September 11th. I'm working for a hedge fund. The portfolio manager is sitting right in front of me, and I'm behind him, looking at the back of his head, and we're looking at this computer screen because we're going over our stock positions. The bell's going to ring at 9:30. He's a former Air Force fighter pilot and got his master's, and he's running this hedge fund, and I'm his trader. And we're going over their stock positions, and it's well before 9:30. And I'm the one that opens and closes all the long and short positions. And I'm looking over in the corner, and there's a TV, and it's that Maria Bartolomo giving some type of an account. And then it cuts away to the Twin Towers in New York. And I look up, and one's just smoking, right? So that's where I was, 2001. The hedge fund. It's my second year there. You know exactly, something that serious happens in your life, you never forget what was going on. Tim, and I heard some of your story, and I read about it and listened to it from other folks, and listened to your speech at New York City SEAL Swim. Can you take us back to that day and just kind of walk us through the events as you remember them best and what was going on?
Yeah, sure. I was in the Office of Emergency Management. Our office was actually in 7 World Trade Center, which was on the north side of the complex, directly across from the North Tower. And we were on the 23rd floor of 7 World Trade Center. There were other government agencies inside this building that we worked with. So I was Mayor's Office of Emergency Management. I went in there around a little before 8 o'clock, and I always stopped in the cafeteria first to get my Cheerios and hot tea and orange juice. And I would just sit down there and read the newspapers because we didn't have smartphones back then.
Right.
So I actually got the physical copies of the newspapers, and I was sitting there going through the newspapers when the power went out in the building. I didn't hear or see anything, but the people that were facing the North Tower, they were sitting at the glass, and they faced the North Tower, and they could see it. So all those folks at once jumped up and started running by me toward the exit. And I had to grab one young lady by the shoulders and stop her and look her in the eye and kind of shake her back to reality. And I asked her what happened, and she said a plane hit the tower, and that was the first I knew of it. So, we practice and train and drill for what we call the big one, right? And this was the big one. And we were going to do a full activation of our operations center and all that stuff. But it wasn't that unusual. I mean, we had planes hit buildings before in New York City, helicopters hit buildings in New York City before. So it wasn't like completely unprecedented. Of course, I had no idea what was coming. So I went up to the 23rd floor and activated our watch command to make about 150 phone calls as quickly as they can to bring in our local, state, federal, and private sector partners who were going to help us through this disaster and support the big incident commander, which was Mayor Giuliani. And all those people would have to come in to our office, to our emergency operations center, and man their workstations and use everything at their disposal to help us get through this disaster. I went into the emergency operations center, which was brand new, state of the art, like Star Wars, big screens all over the place, hundreds of workstations. And the supervisor there, Mike Berkowitz, was already powering that whole thing up. in preparation for the influx of people. My job as a supervisor of field operations was to go to the command post and generally not be the incident commander, but to support the incident commander, which in this case was the fire chief. I went to my car down on VC Street. I took off my tie and my dress shirt, and I put on my mayor's office windbreaker, my heavy leather boots, and they made us wear this stupid green helmet so people knew that we were in the mayor's office, which I hated. It was embarrassing. And we're trained as firefighters that before you go into a building under destruction, whether by fire or collapse or, in this case, a plane, you always try and look at three sides of the building to get a current size up. And I wanted to do that. So I went from street level up an exterior concrete staircase, one level, to the World Trade Center the World Trade Center Plaza. And I looked out over the plaza, and it was littered with debris, plane parts, building parts, on fire, black smoke, white smoke. And if you remember seeing the video of all the paper flooding down from the upper floors of the tower when the plane went in and knocked it out. And that's what it looked like. It really did look like Armageddon. And I started to question my assumption that it was a small plane. I went into the North Tower at that level, the plaza level, and the command post was down one level at the street level in the lobby. And there was an escalator right there, and there were hundreds of civilians kind of funneling onto that escalator. And I noticed what they were not doing. They were not pushing, screaming, trampling each other. In fact, it was the opposite. For every person who was obese, pregnant, disabled, injured, there are 4 or 5 office workers helping that person. And it gave me hope. And it showed me that in this disastrous moment, people were taking the time to help each other. And they weren't running each other over. And it gave me, hope that day that we would be okay, because that's the true human spirit. Is there evil in the world? Yes, there's evil in the world. But 99% of humans are good, and they want to help each other in these circumstances. So I got into that kind of funnel, and I got on the escalator, and I was going down the escalator, and I looked out over the lobby, this big, huge, expansive lobby of the North Tower, and there were hundreds of firefighters awaiting their orders to go up, with all their gear, with all their equipment, 100 pounds of equipment, and their turnout gear with the yellow stripes, the reflective stripes on it, right? And I had to admit something that I don't like to admit very often. I had to admit that the cops were right. Because as I looked out over the lobby, these hundreds of firefighters with their yellow reflective stripes looked like bumblebees. And that's what the cops called us, bumblebees.
Say that again?
And it looked like a hive of hundreds of bumblebees. And I now call it the hive of heroes.
Gotcha.
I got to the bottom of the escalator, and right there was a bumblebee. And I turned and I looked up at his face, and it was my friend, firefighter Chris Blackwell from Rescue 3 in the Bronx, where I used to work. And Chris, I worked with him for 7 years, not just in the same firehouse, but on the same shift. So he was like a real blood brother to me. We did a lot of stuff together, and we helped a lot of people, and we saved a lot of lives. And we went to a lot of fires. And I felt like he was a real brother to me. And when he, not only was he this badass South Bronx fireman, but he was also, when he went home to Connecticut where he lived, he was a paramedic. And so he was always helping people, right? Because we're people of service. Police officers, firefighters, paramedics, nurses, doctors, military, right? We're people of service. And we had so much respect for Chris that whenever we had a patient, especially a child, from a fire or a building collapse or a car crash, we always tried to put that child in Chris's hands because we knew in his hands that child had the best shot at life, because that's how much respect we had for Chris. And Chris and I always greeted each other the same way, no matter the situation. And so when I saw him at the bottom of the escalator, I turned toward him and I came straight up to attention with my arms at my sides. And he faced directly in front of me, he faced me, and he came to attention. And with his right hand, he did a big arc with his right hand, and he came around and he took the unlit stub of a cigar out of the corner of his mouth, and he put it in a big arc. He put it back down at his side, and we both leaned in, and we kissed on the lips, and we went back to attention, and he put the cigar back in his mouth. And we did that for two reasons. We did that because we truly loved each other like brothers. But we also did it to freak out all the cops and firemen around us. They all get weird. They all got weirded out when we kissed on the lips, right? And so we actually did that in the morning of September 11th in the North Tower lobby. And after we kissed, he said to me, "Timmy, this is really bad." I said, "I know, Chris. Do your best and be careful. I love you." And he said, "I love you too." And after he said that, he turned around and he went in the stairwell and he went up to save the lives of people he didn't know. Right?
Mm.
Jim, in that moment, he had a choice to make.
Yep.
He could have turned around, he could have taken off his helmet, and he could have gone home to his loving children and loving wife. But he didn't. He had free will, and he chose to go up to help and save people he didn't know. Why? He did that because 15 years earlier, he had taken an oath to become a New York City fireman. Right? You put your hand up, you swear on the Bible, and you say, I am willing to give my life for someone I don't know. I'm willing to give my life for my neighbor. And in this moment, Chris had that choice to make, whether he was going to fulfill the oath he took or not. And not only did Chris do it, but 343 New York City firefighters, 37 Port Authority police officers, 23 NYPD police officers, 8 paramedic EMS guys, New York State court officers, and others. Every one of them made that choice to fulfill their oath in deed, in action, and to go save the lives of people they didn't know. And over the years, as I think about this, which I do about every day, it has become clear to me that every one of these heroes performed at the end of their life, the very last act of their life. Every one of them performed acts of the greatest love, because that's what it says in the Bible. And every one of them chose to give their life to save the lives of others who they didn't know. And that's exactly what firefighter Chris Blackwell did here on September 11, 2001, in the North Tower of the World Trade Center.
You're both in the same tower, right? Take us through what happens next, because that tower collapsed with Chris in it. But yet, you're here today talking to us. All right, Tim. So you're talking about Chris, and it's a challenging story to hear, and I've heard it multiple times. And so I must, I'm sure it's easier to say every time you say it, but never easy. But you guys are both in the North Tower and he goes up, but you're still here today. So walk us through what happens next, because obviously there's a divergence.
Yeah, so Chris goes up in the stairwell, and someone yells my name across the hive of heroes, and I look over and I can see my best friend, Captain Terry Hatton, towering above all the other firefighters, because Terry was 6'4", and with his helmet and boots on, he's like 6'7", 6'8", and so I ran to my best friend, and he put his arms way out like a big wingspan kind of thing, and I wrapped my arms right around his chest, and he kind of came down over the top of me, like, and I got smothered in his hug, and he pulled me close to his chest, and he kissed me on my right cheek, and he said in my ear, "I love you, brother. I may never see you again." And I kind of blew off that comment, but he was the smart one, and he knew that he was going to have to go up and that I would stay in the lobby because that was his job and that was my job. And uh, so again, another example that he knew it. Chris Blackwell knew it. Terry Hatton knew it. Patty Brown knew it. Everybody knew it. They knew that when they went in that stairwell, they were not coming back. And they all still did it. And Terry did the exact same thing that Chris Blackwell did. At the end of his life, his last act was an act of the greatest love for humanity. A fireman came running into the lobby of the North Tower screaming that the South Tower had also been hit by a plane, and that was the first that I knew of it. And of course, this was a very, very sobering moment because now we knew that we were under attack. And as one of the chaplains said, the firefighters of 9/11 went to war only with tools of rescue. We had no idea that we were going to war. It was imposed on us. And all we were doing was trying to help people. The leadership huddled up. We decided to split our forces and send some of us to the South Tower. Myself and Assistant Chief Donald Burns from the fire department went to the South Tower together to open up that command post. I had a quick conversation with him as we ran to the South Tower, and basically, there's not a whole lot we can do. It was just me and him, and he had ordered a fifth alarm, which would bring a few hundred firefighters to the South Tower, but we had to wait for ours because the first 5 alarms were going to the North Tower. Ours were coming from Staten Island and Brooklyn and Queens and in the North Bronx, and we had to wait for them to get there. Myself and Chief Burns split up, and I went to the South Tower elevator lobby where there were people trapped in an elevator, and the hoistway doors were open so you could see into the shaft, but the elevator car itself was stuck at the top of the opening, so you could just see all the people's feet who were trapped inside the elevator car. And I remember seeing the men's hands and dress shirts and dress jackets as they were trying to pull that car down more to open up the 8 inches to a foot or two so that people could start jumping out. But they couldn't move it, and they were stuck, and they were screaming. And I didn't realize it at the time, but that elevator car had free fallen 70 floors. Because when Flight 175 came in, it snapped the cable for their elevator car. And so these poor people had just taken this horrific ride, fully expecting to be killed when it hit the concrete pit. But the emergency brakes locked onto it and stopped that car from crashing into the concrete. and now those emergency brakes were holding onto that elevator, and they were not going to let go. So it saved their life, but now they're stuck, and no human strength is going to move that car. And in addition to this, the elevator pit below them was full of jet fuel that was on fire, and they were on top of it, and they were getting cooked. They were burning. In my frustration, because what they needed was a fireman, not a mayor's office guy. And I turned to see if I could see someone or something to help, and I was yelling for people to bring fire extinguishers. And when I turned to my right, I hit a person, and I looked over. It was a bumblebee, and I looked up at his face. And it was firefighter Michael Lynch from Ladder 4, who I knew. And he squeezed my shoulder because he saw the situation that was happening. He saw the look in my face. But he was a professional fireman. He had all his gear on. He had his tools with him. And he is exactly what those people needed. They needed a professional fireman, and that was firefighter Michael Lynch. And he squeezed my shoulder, and he said, "Timmy, I got it." And I later told his widow, Denise, that in that moment, he may as well have had angel's wings coming out of his back, because he was the angel sent to save the lives of those poor people. I wound up having to leave that elevator scene because we were told over our radio that was confirmed by the FBI that there was a third plane coming for us. Confirmed by the FBI, impact imminent, take cover. And so I left Mike the Angel with those people, and I went to the command post, and I found a landline that worked, because now none of the cell phones, nothing, we had Nextels back then, nothing was working. And so I found a hardline landline that worked, and I called the operator, and I said, "I'm with Mayor Giuliani in the World Trade Center. I need to speak with the White House immediately." And she tried to get through to the White House. She couldn't get through. I said, "Then the Pentagon." And she said, "Well, the Pentagon's also under attack," which was the first we heard of it. I wound up talking to New York State Emergency Management Office, and they assured me that the fighter jets were coming as fast as they could to protect us overhead. We couldn't do our jobs and save people if planes kept crashing into us, and we needed the help of the United States military on civilian soil in New York City. And she reassured me, the New York State Emergency Management assured me that they were coming to protect us as fast as they could. The lobby was filling up. Now, this is the South Tower. The lobby was filling up with people who were badly injured, and when they made it to the lobby, they mistakenly thought they were safe. And so it was impeding our evacuation efforts. So Chief Burns asked me to go get the paramedics, and that's why I left the South Tower to go get the paramedics. Myself and 3 paramedics, including my friend Captain Charlie Wells, were running back into the South Tower when the South Tower collapsed. So we were on the sidewalk about 20 feet from the door of the South Tower when it collapsed. If we had crossed that threshold into the lobby of the South Tower, I wouldn't be here talking to you. But because we heard the first piece of steel snap, it was so loud that there was no question what it was. We knew the building was coming down. Nobody had to look up. Nobody had to ask another person. It was collapsing, and everybody knew it. And we're trained as firefighters and through our experience that you can never outrun a building collapse. It will always catch you and kill you. It happens too fast. So we had just gone by a door in the adjoining 3 World Trade Center, which was the Marriott Hotel. And in the lobby of the Marriott Hotel was the Tall Ships restaurant. And we had just gone by the door into the Tall Ships restaurant. And so I yelled to the paramedics, "Follow me." and we all ran for that door. I got into that Tall Ships restaurant, and Jim, it was as clear as the room you're sitting in, and in the snap of a finger, it went pitch dark black. And the South Tower was collapsing onto the Marriott Hotel, and now the Marriott Hotel was collapsing around me and around us. And everything that wasn't nailed down was in my face. As the building came down, all the air that was in all those hallways and rooms and stuff is getting pushed out where I am in the lobby. So this wind is ferocious. And I was on all fours. And I know the strongest part of a building and the place we find people who survive building collapses is the vertical columns, the normally steel vertical columns. And I knew that's where I had to head. If there was any way I was going to live, it would be next to a column. And so I'm crawling as fast as I can. It's pitch black because the dust. I'm getting pummeled with all kinds of stuff. You can't see, you can't breathe because the dust was so thick. It was caking in my mouth and in my nose and in my ears, my eyes. And I'm trying to stick my mouth and my nose into my t-shirt to breathe. And it was so loud, I compare it to sitting on the tarmac at JFK Airport, surrounded by 747s full blast. And every time you thought it was the loudest thing you've ever heard in your life, it would increase by 10 and 10 and 10 and 10 as the building came down around me. And I found a huge vertical steel column, and I wrapped my arms around it, and I squeezed it so hard that I thought I was going to get inside the steel, because that's what I really wanted to do, because I wanted to live. Or you could say that God led me to this vertical column, which is what I believe. And I'm holding on to this vertical steel column with all my strength. And the wind is so powerful that it lifts me up off the ground. It blew the helmet off my head. I'm trying to hold on to this column with all my strength. Because I know I'm probably dead, and my only chance at life was to hold on to this column. And as soon as it started, I said that was my name. I said my prayer. I said, please, not right now. I just want to tell my family I love them one more time. And just like that, it stopped. And when it stopped, and when it stopped. I was alive. Still couldn't breathe, couldn't sing, but I was alive. And I bounced around in this restaurant for a bit. I found this steel and fallen down. And I stuck my fingers in it to lift it up. And when I lifted up this steel roll down gate, all these fingers came from the other side of about 15 or something people trapped on the inside of this gate, and together we rolled up the gate. And the other patch between the collapse came through a 7-story drop. And the rolling gate where I was. And so we turned around and we went back the other way and we all got out. And that group of people lived. They did a scientific study of that space we lived, because we are the largest group of people who lived. And they wanted to understand why. Well, what they found was that was the part of the World Trade Center complex that was damaged in the 1993 terrorist bombing, the truck bomb. And so when the steel workers used, replaced the steel, that column I was holding onto was one of the new pieces of steel, and the steel workers used a piece of steel that was much bigger than it needed to be. And that's why it was such a big piece of column steel. So really, aside from my faith, the ironworkers in New York saved my life
Mm.
because they put that piece of steel there for me to hold on to 8 or 9 years later. Um, in the scientific study, this scientist guy proved, and this is published, proved that the wind where I was, when it lifted me up off the ground, was 160 miles an hour. So that is the volume of air that was being pushed out when I was. I don't know how I was. I can't tell you. I'm not that strong to hold on to a column and 60 miles an hour. And so I think that was, God was certainly with me in that moment. And I am here today talking about it because of that. And um, look, we lived, and I now know it took me a long time to figure it out, but I now know who I am here. And I am here to speak of my friends. I'm here to speak of their heroism, their fearlessness, their courage, their bravery, and the love that they all demonstrated that day. And God has given me the strength of a voice to be able to talk about them uh, and to be able to get through it. Because it's not easy to talk about, but I have the strength to do it.
Mm. Well, I can't imagine. I can't imagine. I'm in Indiana when this happens. You're 20 feet away.
Yeah.
So sit there and say, I get it. I empathize. You really don't. I remember being upset. I remember being upset that day and all week long. But it's nothing compared to that. And there's so many instances where, man, you will not believe how this person made it, and you will not. And there's other instances, well, you will not believe how this person didn't. And it's so standard for anyone to be like, well, this happened to me. I'm now this kind of person. I've been traumatized. I've been hurt. I've been through so much pain. I'm now X. And you simply just said, I now have this new why, this new reason, which tells me you had to have answered the question, not why did this happen to me, but why did this happen for me? Why did this happen for me? Which we talked about on a couple other episodes. But when you change it, that preposition to for, you're now back in control of your life a little bit, and then you can start deciding how you're going to respond. Because so many, and understandably, would be through that situation and so traumatized that they don't come back very well. They don't move forward very well at all. They're a shell of the person they were. They're so fearful that their brains don't handle it. How long and onerous was the process just to, one, physically fix Manhattan, and then after that question, we want to get into, because I know you have a big passion and a lot of work with folks with PTSD. What's the process for dealing with the pain, for dealing with the mental hurt, right? Because my house burns down, I can get it rebuilt, or I can build a new one, or move somewhere else. But that's not the part in my brain isn't fixed. So there's two pieces there. How long was the recovery process for the city physically, and then what are you doing now? Because I know you're helping a lot of folks handle adversity like that. And this isn't really a big episode on being athletic, but everyone has challenges in the athletic field and out of the athletic field, dealing with people, dealing with divorce, dealing with murder, dealing with crime, dealing with rejection, dealing with a loss, right? So everyone has to have a process to bounce back. And so let's talk about those two questions if we can, Tim.
Yeah, the physical rebuild of Lower Manhattan is still ongoing today, 23 years, almost 24 years later. Um,
Hmm.
So, for example, 2 World Trade Center has not even broken ground yet. So, although we've made a bit of progress, we're still in the process of rebuilding Lord. So it's generations of rebuilding. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
the harder thing is the mental, emotional, and actually physical health of all of us, right? All of us, the those who survived, those who worked on the pile for 9 months, a lot of whom are sick or have died from 9/11 illness. I found out just about 1 year ago now that I have 9/11 cancer, uh, which I had been watching for a long time. Uh, um, and I've been very diligent and careful about it, and the prognosis is actually very good. Um, but we are still suffering with all these maladies 23 years later. Now, the second part of my normal talk is called Patience and Grief, and it's important that people understand the word patience in there, because it takes much longer than we would hope to heal and to rebuild. Uh, I, I lost 100 of my friends, and basically my whole world of male friendships was taken from me that day. And bro, it took me a decade probably to find and become friends with men who I would say are of the same or similar quality as my friends were. Um, and now, I've come into this Navy SEAL and uh, other military teams and intelligence community groups who I would say are on the level of the quality of my friends. And it took a long, long time. So patience in grief means patience, and the trick is to get to stay alive to get there. Because if I had harmed myself back then, uh, through all the funerals and wakes and memorial services and all the tears and all the pain, and then I wouldn't be this person, this man I am today, and I wouldn't have a friend like Jason Redman. I wouldn't have a friend like Bill Brown or these other guys, and like the group of quality human beings who never gave up in the hunt for Bin Laden or going after al-Zawahiri. Like these people who did this on our behalf in the shadows and took and never will take no credit for any of the work they've done. I never would have known these people if I had harmed myself back then. And so looking back on it now, I am so grateful that I had the strength, that God gave me the strength to be able to get through this. I did it in an unconventional way. Most of my friends who survived, most of the people from down there that worked on the pile for 9 months have walked away from it, and they hide from it. And they don't talk about it. It eats them from the inside out. And I've been able to help news videographers, police officers, firefighters, other burn victim survivors from the day of 9/11. None of them wanted to go back to the site. They refused to come into Manhattan. They refused to go downtown. They refused to go to the Memorial Museum. And I have been gifted with the ability to get them to go down and confront their pain and face it, and like punch the pain in the nose, and not let the pain control them. So I speak about this many times a week. I've helped so many people get through it and confront the pain. Patience and grief. Confront what your pain is and don't let it control you. You control it. And I have been very successful surviving this way and then being able to help other people survive this way. My friend Donna, I'll just say her first name, was burned very badly in the North Tower. She's a survivor from the 78th floor. I mean, of the South Tower, sorry. And she got burned pretty badly. And I helped her get through it with the help of her husband and me. And I helped her face it. And now she goes around and tells her story. Doing she's doing this tremendous charity work that's helping others, our military, our first responders. And she has found her new mission and purpose in life because she confronted the pain. So that works for me. It works for people who I know were very badly affected by 9/11. Um, and the other thing I learned from therapy, there's a lot of idiot therapists out there, in my opinion. Um, but if you stick with it, and again, you're patient, and you keep trying someone new and trying someone new until you find the one who works well for you, then you start to get some real help. And I went through nearly 10 therapists, psychiatrists, whatever, until I found this young woman named Ashley, um, who taught me. She never pretended to know my pain, but what she did is she gave me tools that she had learned that I could use to help myself. One of those tools is compartmentalization of grief, and that works for me. I would set aside in the mornings 1 hour in the mornings where I would allow myself to cry in private, mourn the loss of my friends. But then I would listen to Andrea Bocelli. Music therapy is good for me. And Bocelli his voice is magic to my heart. And so I would just put the noise canceling headphones on with his voice, and I would cry and cry and cry for an hour. But then when that hour was up, I took those headphones off. I put them away. I wiped my tears, and I always made myself do one task and complete one task that day that was positive, that would make me feel good about myself. Admiral McRaven calls it make your bed, right? There's many different ways you can do that. But if you compartmentalize your grief, it doesn't have to be an hour. That's just what I chose. It could be 2 hours. In the beginning, it could be 4 hours. But then you start to try over time to whittle that down so that you have more time to do positive tasks and positive things for yourself and less time grieving as time goes by. And you kind of you do it for yourself. And you decide how long your grief is going to be and all that. But if you do that and you can accomplish something positive every day, maybe in a week you start doing 2 positive things in a day. And then maybe in 3 or 4 weeks you do 3 or 4 positive things a day, and you start feeling better about yourself. And all that helped me over the years to get where I'm at now. God is listening. You don't always, like the song, right? You don't always get what you want. but your heart gets healed over time.
The rest of the song is "You Get What You Need."
Yeah, yeah, and that's exactly right.
A lot of takeaways there.
Yeah.
I'm basically just the process guy. I'm not the best strength coach or nutrition coach. I'm the guy that helps people through the process of moving their habits so they can hit the next target. And whether it's with athletics or their own just personal journey to be better mentally and physically, that's the deal. And so when you have a loss, and a very trivial loss is losing weight or gaining weight when you want the opposite, or your team loses on the field, or you get cut or whatever, versus hundreds of your close friends die, right? That's not comparable. In both instances, though, you must then at some point make some choices. Otherwise, you're just the victim, and life just keeps happening to you.
Right.
So you're making choices to see different therapists and psychiatrists. You're making choices to make decisions about them and evaluate them. That gives you back to that control piece. And on the short term, you have a bad play, you have a team loss. At my business, maybe people quit, or something goes wrong, or machines break, or a coach quits, or whatever. Some things don't go well. You'll have those days where things aren't going well. And what I always tell people is that you take a moment to kind of assess and calm down in that moment. But then you got to figure out some way to get a win that day. Maybe you call someone else. Maybe you make a new sale. Maybe you get an extra workout in. Maybe you eat really well at night instead of drinking a whole bunch. You get a win that way. And again, not at all comparable to a loss like you had. But at some point, you said you got to get a win, essentially.
Yeah.
Got to do something positive.
Yeah.
And I'm smiling the whole time because it just dovetails with our philosophies and what we put out. And our mantra is win the day, right? You can have these losses, but you got to try to get a win, whatever that win is for you, right? And if it's okay to be upset about having a loss for an amount of time, but you still got to try to turn things around, make a decision, change the momentum, and then you go back to building, right? So that whole, if you've been through my book and all that I sent you, the core values are right there in the beginning. Sisu is the big one on never giving up, ever, right? Ever. It's the mantra for the country of Finland. The word Sisu, you just don't give up. But the Kaizen is another one out of Japan, and that's another core value, which means you have to get better. So if you're never giving up, you hold on. He said if you hurt yourself, then we don't have this. We don't have you as a speaker. We don't have you on this show. We don't have we're missing out on your impact. We're missing out on those gifts and what you can still do. So what a tremendous gift that this happened because of all the great things you've done from it. And it's been so horrible that it did, so it's never really going to be a gift like that. But the fact that you turned it around, that's the gift. And it's that peace in the gym when people come in. I love it when they have a big squat or a big number or whatever. I love that part. But it's 1/10 of how much I love the mental PRs people get when they realize they can do some things. They have that confidence. And the fact that you pick a career where you're in total service, hands-on, saving people's lives. And then once you retire, because 9/11 happens in 01 and you're done in 04, now we're 2 decades later, you're doing the same thing. You're saving people's lives. You're helping people mentally. You're just making an impact. It's that legacy. So, man, what a gift. So, man, thanks again, Tim.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, outstanding. You point out, like, when people are having mindset issues, right? And you said, you know what? In a couple of different instances, just get over yourself. You don't always have to win everything, or it's not always going to go your way.
Yeah.
And it clearly didn't go away 9/11, but smaller things too, like you get cut off or someone hits your car, right? Things always go over way. But I love how you said, just get over it.
Yeah.
How helpful is that for you sometimes?
It's essential. Yeah, because things don't go the way you want them to, and I mean many times, right?
Yeah.
Even in my own family, you know, my, I don't want to say too much, but you know, my niece is going through a hard time, and I try to help her the best I can. But it's making her stronger, and and she is actually showing her resilience, and she's going to learn from that, and she's going to be a better person for it, even though it's hard right now.
Mm.
Uh, and so we have to keep that in mind. We have to take a deep breath. People aren't fair. People are downright mean sometimes. People are jealous. People are lots of things. But we just have to push through it. And sometimes, this is a lesson you learn as you get older, I think. Like, just get over yourself. Please just stop. Like, look in the mirror and laugh at yourself. And, it's just, you know, uh, check it. Check your ego.
Right.
Check your stuff, man. And you're just another human. And
Right.
that's wonderful and beautiful, but just get over yourself.
Right. 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 Um, Talk about a little bit like what's going on next because you have a number of endeavors. I want to make sure that we go through them all. Talk about the Tunnel of the Towers Foundation, what that is, and then Operation 300. Let's just start there. I want to make sure
Yeah,
I want people to know what you're doing.
the Joe, I'm gonna talk about my book in a minute, so I just want to bring it up here. So the I have been volunteering with the Tunnel to Towers Foundation for probably over 12, 15 years, something like that. But I just started kind of officially onboarding with them to do fundraising. Uh, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation uh, supports our first responders and our military um, by paying off mortgages of line of duty deaths of our heroes with children under 18 years old. So if a police officer is killed in the line of duty and he has children under 18 or she has children under 18 years old, we will generally within 1 week we will pay off their entire mortgage, so they no longer have a mortgage. And the reason for that is, well, they deserve it, but the reason for that is so that the children don't have to move out of their home, 2 weeks before Christmas or their birthday or something. So we do that. We also do that for Gold Star families. We build smart adaptive homes for catastrophically injured military, uh, whether it's a brain injury or a back injury or loss of limbs or whatever. We will build a home custom to their injury so that they can get around their own home easily. So we will build them a home anywhere in America to their ability. And then the big one, and one of the reasons I just went on board with them is to help them with fundraising, right? We call it development because the Siller family, so it's the Stephen Siller Tunnel to Towers Foundation, the Siller family, uh, led by Frank Siller, who is the CEO, have made the public statement that we will eradicate veteran homelessness in America, period. And that is a
Wow.
big mission. We estimate that is about an $8 billion problem that we as Americans owe our military veteran heroes. They should not be sleeping in the street. They should be sleeping in a room with a bed, in a shower, and a toilet, and a little kitchen. So I think we've bought, renovated, or built uh, 12 hotels throughout America so far. And by the end of next year, I think we'll be around 24 hotels. And these are for our military veterans to live in for free. Not only will we support them there, but in the first floor of every one of these hotels, we will have supportive services. So someone that knows how to deal with the VA, someone who does mental health, someone that does addiction, um, and physical health and things like that. So within this hotel, all these veterans, we are doing everything we can to get them back into society and to help them help themselves. So this is my passion, is to do this around America, doing the fundraising and trying to chip away at that $8 billion number. So that's the Tunnel to Towers. T2T.org is their website, T2T.org. And then OP300 is OP300.org, OP300.org. And this is the Gold Star family of Navy SEAL hero Aaron Vaughn, who was killed in Extortion 17 in Afghanistan. And Aaron loved children, and so the family started a camp for Gold Star children near Stuart, Florida. And they've been building this property out, and they bring the children of Gold Star military heroes who give their lives, gave their all for America. Now it's up to us to take care of their families. And so we bring the children in from all over America to this camp, and they teach the children in this camp how to do the things that dad or mom would have taught them: hunting, fishing, rowing, sailing, bow and arrow, shooting, how to raise farm animals, how to do a garden. And so the kids come to camp. I think they did 7 last year, and teach these kids how to do it. And then at the end of the camp, they are assigned a mentor that would have been their dad's age, and that mentor stays with them until they're 18 years old. So those are really the two charities that I try to support as much as I can. I do a lot more, but those are the two big ones. And we're just starting this Missions of Honor for the Global War on Terror veterans out of northwestern Wisconsin. This will be a national program to bring our Global War on Terror veterans to New York City to visit the 9/11 Museum and some other historic sites downtown. And we put on a program for them at the museum. A couple of us who were involved in 9/11 speak with them and basically tell them thank you for going to war for me, because that's the truth of what happened. Is a lot of these, mostly men warriors who went to war, a lot of them they had a New York City Fire Department patch, either on their uniform or tucked in their uniform or on their sleeve. They did it for us. They did it for the NYPD, the Port Authority Police. And now, again, we owe them a thank you, and we owe them to bring them to the site and hear from us that we are grateful and so appreciative of what they did for us.
That's outstanding. Outstanding. Oh my gosh. How about Eagle Rise and the Bravest? Talk about those entities.
The Bravest is going away, so I won't get into that. But Eagle Rise Speakers Network is a network that a few of us started a few years back, led by Jason and Erica Redmond. Jason Redmond, the Navy SEAL, who took 8 rounds from a machine gun, including 1 round in the face, and he lived to talk about it. And now we do this kind of I'll call it motivational speaking, and so we have a whole speakers network of police officers, firefighters, military, and others who have been through tremendous adversity and have come out the other side, similar to me, in a positive way. So if anyone out there needs a speaker, we have a tremendous group of speakers who have been through breathtaking life experience, and they will come talk to you. And it's called EagleRiseSpeakers.org or .com.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So there's that, and then the last thing I want to push here is my book, which will be coming out in 2026, called The Greatest Love: A 9/11 Survivor's Guide to Leadership, Sacrifice, and Legacy. and so we're working on that now. I am grateful to Jason Redman for helping me with this. As he's putting out his fourth book, I'm putting out my first, and he's been giving me some mentorship uh, in order to do that. And it is the foreword will be written by Admiral William McRaven, who is obviously a bit famous and a big New York Times bestseller. So I've come across him a couple times in my travels, and he's agreed to write my foreword for my book. So it'll be some of the stuff I spoke with you guys about, and
Mm-hmm.
then some of the ways that I would recommend people get through this stuff, and what worked for me and what did not work for me and stuff like that. So yeah,
McRaven's the make your bed guy,
yes,
right? And so I have, uh, I know he has two books, the Bullfrog book and the Make Your Bed book. I can't remember if he has a third one. He might have a third.
yeah. I think he has four
And
altogether. Yeah.
okay. And it was just a week ago, I have this batch of kids that come back for training through the holidays. And we're talking about getting wins and setting your life up so you're
Yeah.
disciplined. So I said, you pull up McRaven's speech to Texas where he went to school there.
Yeah.
And he gives you a whole list of things to do, but just start with making your bed, man, Jesus. And he's like, okay, And so because of his speech, I make my bed every day.
Right.
If I go to a hotel room and then we don't have service, I make the bed.
Right.
If I'm on vacation at an Airbnb, I make the bed.
Yep.
One, I don't like to break my habits because I'm worried I'm just going to slide and then be off the wagon and I won't be able to do it again. But then it just sets your day up. You come home and yeah, my bed's made. So I love that piece.
Yeah. Agreed.
I love what you're doing there.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Boy, I hate to keep you on for hours and hours, which I absolutely would, and I'd fly out there just to hang out and learn more. And truly mean that.
Thank you.
Do you still work out? Are you still active physically?
So I would say generally that is a no. My workout is for my mental
Mm-hmm.
health, and I try to do 5 miles 3 or 4 times a week, just walking
Okay.
with again
Sure.
the music in my ears, and I actually walk down to the World Trade Center, and I go visit the names of my buddies, and I say hi to them. Sometimes I speak in the museum, sometimes I don't, but then I always go to O'Hara's, and I see my friends there, and that's good for my mental and emotional health down there. So
Okay. Awesome. One of the things we talk about is that you want to change your overall psyche, start moving physically.
yeah,
You can change your attitude and your mental approach in 10 minutes. And then I just ended up feeling better. I ended up feeling better if I'm active, right?
yeah,
The hormonal release, the endorphin release, it's just good stuff.
great.
Usually when we're done with our episode or we're winding down, I finish with these rapid fire questions for athletes. But some of the questions like, who are your favorite superheroes? Like, you listed so many. Personally,
Yeah,
they're going to top all the Supermen and Batmans of the world.
Yeah.
Favorite sports and athletes, like these people that give their lives like that. That's clearly leaders and heroes that we all look up to. Let me ask you this: is there a book or two that you recommend to folks?
yes. So that's actually a very good question. I highly recommend a book called What Brothers Do by Michael Everett Brown. What Brothers Do by Michael Everett Brown. And Michael
All right.
was a doctor, but he was a New York City fireman for 4 years before he resigned and became a medical doctor. He was an ER doc out in Las Vegas. His brother, Patrick Brown, was a captain in the FDNY with me. He was my other best friend. He was the highest decorated New York City fireman, murdered on September 11th. And so his blood brother, Michael Brown, no relation to me, wrote this book about his journey driving across America to go find his brother's body in the rubble, and not only discovering his brother's physical body, but discovering his brother's life and his friends and all that. He's Dr. Michael Brown was a very talented person. The book is a page turner. You won't put it down. And it tells the story of what we went through in the months and years after 9/11. Very sadly, Michael, a couple of years back, passed away from 9/11 illness from digging through the pile for his brother. So it winds up that these terrorist scumbags wind up taking both Patrick and Michael and ripping them from their families. That's the book. The 32-minute documentary film called The Twin Towers about the Viggiano family, Vigiano, Viggiano. And the one police officer and one firefighter, brothers, who are killed on 9/11. So this documentary film was supposed to be a different film about the police officer Joe. And while they were filming it, 9/11 happened and it changed the story. So I use it when I teach law enforcement down at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. I do this across the country with the FBI a lot at their field offices. So I always show them this documentary film. It is, I think, the most powerful storytelling surrounding 9/11 that I'm aware of. And it's just 32 minutes. And I can send you a link. It's on my YouTube channel. And
Okay.
I can send you the link for that. But so that's the book and that's the documentary.
Okay. Is there a quote that you love, or only it's hard to whittle those down to one? I probably have 1,000. In fact, I have a whole book that's 300 pages of just quotes.
Yeah.
You have one that means a lot to you?
Yeah. I mean, it's just the John 15:13, no greater love.
Right.
And that's exactly what my book is going to be. And that's what I say that because that's really what they did. It's really what they did, and
It is.
It doesn't get more accurate than that quote in the Bible. So that's it.
Okay. If people want to reach you and help
Yeah.
you're raising money, like how do you want people to contact you?
tbrown@thebravest.com. That's it.
Brown at thebravest.com.
Yeah.
Okay. Man, what a great time today. And I was been looking forward to this ever since you agreed so quickly to come on the show.
Sure.
And because I asked Bill to connect us, and he did because Bill's awesome.
Yeah.
And you said, sure, I've been looking forward to this. I was telling people about it. And it's so easy to do. Like earlier today, I have like a mountain of tasks to get done today. And I'm getting annoyed and I'm pissed off. And my wife's like, oh, you're stressed.
Yeah.
And then so at the 1 o'clock time slot, I have it down there to start doing a bunch of prep for this for tonight.
Yeah.
And so I usually do an hour and a half. And I'm watching things, I'm reading things, and I'm like 6 minutes into this clip, and you're there in uniform and you're talking about the events, and I was like, Jesus Christ, Jim, you're such a dumbass. Like, have some perspective. Like, this is happening in a few hours, and you're worried about something so stupid.
Yeah.
And things matter. Your family matters. Your holidays and finances. I get that, right? I get that. But man, it's just so sobering. And so once I finished that prep, I come upstairs and Jen's like, "Man, you look like you're in a better mood." I said, "Well, I'm kind of like not down, but like it's very sombering research, but all my stress is gone." And she's like, "What happened?" I go, Well, I didn't even meet Tim really, and I've seen some things about him and watched him and listened to him speak already, and I'm already calmer because he just simply helped me with some perspective today, and that was just a few hours ago. So,
Outstanding.
um,
Good.
yeah,
Good.
Tim, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, Jim.
Love to continue to connect and work with you down the road.
Yes, sir.
It's been a true gift. So, if anyone wants to reach out to Tim and what he's about, look up the Tunnel to Towers Foundation, look up Operation 300, or he asked you, he offered it out there, email him directly, tbrown@thebravest.com. And again, if you have questions for us or for other prior guests or how we do things, how we get people better, info@athlete-builder.com. And for those that are playing along at home, it's a reality. It's a reality. My book is out, and what I know, I put in there. Thanks. So just trying to get people better. So again, Tim, thanks so much for being on the show, man. We so grateful for the gift.
God bless you guys. Thank you. Thanks, Jim.
Yep.
Thanks.